Hey there, welcome back to True North Reviews. My name is Ryan, and today we're reviewing the third studio album from the American rock band the Raconteurs. This one is entitled Help a Stranger. This is the first record from the Raconteurs in 11 years, and that's no doubt because of the busy schedule from frontman Jack White. He has frantically been putting together one album after another, either under his own name or with the Dead Weather. With those projects, Jack has dipped his toes in a lot of subgenres of rock, even jumping into the deep end of experimentation with his last solo project, Boarding House Reach, one that I absolutely adored last year. On Boarding House Reach, not only did Jack throw together weird and trippy electronic sounds, but he also managed to craft a highly addictive and contained album, one that was also full of a strong presence both artistically and vocally. He definitely brought a lot of charisma to all of his performances. Now, with that praise came my biggest concern on this new Raconteurs album, and no, it's not because I hate on people who are charismatic, it's more just the fact that I didn't want Jack White stealing the show. In other words, I just wanted this album to be worthy of a Raconteurs release, not just another outlet for Jack to throw himself all over and just control every little aspect of. And what do we get with Help a Stranger? I think it is something that is worthy of a Raconteurs release. I'm very pleased with that. It's something that is rooted in a wide number of subgenres of rock from the 20th century. There are plenty of highlights that come on this album that will pull on the sounds from the psychedelic movement of the 60s, the southern rock and punk rock scenes of the 70s, and even some more modern garage rock from the late 90s into early 2000s. Kicking off those highlights, I first want to mention the track Sunday Driver. This one is one of my favorite tracks on the project. Sunday Driver is a great track on here. We get some glitchy guitar, we get some driving and thrusting guitar as well. Parts of it remind me of something that would have been on Boarding House Reach, with a bit of a road trip rock aesthetic to it, with a bit of Beatles-esque kind of sound to it in the bridge. Moving on from there, the song Don't Bother Me certainly has a Led Zeppelin influence hanging heavy over it. We get a John Bonham-style drum performance paired with frantic vocal shrieks from Jack White. Sounds like it also could have been placed on Boarding House Reach. Then there's a track on here entitled Hey Gyp, Dig the Slowness. This is a 60s rock song cover of Donovan's original, and this one's very rootsy. It sounds like it's coming straight out of the 60s. It sounds like it's very psychedelic, but this time it's a bit more energetic from a tempo perspective as well as performance-wise. It's enough that I do get behind this track more than I do the original, actually. Another cut on here, Now That You're Gone. This one is focusing on an introspective topic, something that has been discussed a million times before, but I am really enjoying the 6/8 rhythm and melodies. I feel like they're super infectious. Some days I don't feel like trying. This one has an interesting structure to it, with the second half building towards a rejuvenating and life-affirming moment, which is a breath of fresh air given that the first half of this track feels like a southern rock Lynyrd Skynyrd experiment gone wrong. Just a little too much of their influence is being worn on the sleeve here. There's also another track on here that I feel like suffers from its influences. This one is entitled Live a Lie. This one is straightforward rock. It's pretty basic with its chord progression. It's generic with its hook. Has a proto-punk aesthetic to it, which I do enjoy, with the distorted guitar riffs playing with this punk slasher attitude. It still ends up being one of the more underwhelming cuts on the project, unfortunately. But bringing it back to the positives, which there are a great number of highlights on here that are incredibly high. What's Yours Is Mine. This one has rattling drums and a resonating groove, one of the number of highlights on this project. A bit of a boogie to it, and it hits super hard. Then we get the closing track, Thoughts and Prayers, which might be one of my favorite closing tracks of the year so far. This one has a bit of a disguise to it. Don't let it fool you for what it initially sounds like. The track kicks off with a very tranquil mood, and then it just evolves into this chaotic fiddle solo. And that solo makes for one of the best climaxes and one of the best progressions in dynamics that I've heard in a while. As a whole project for Help a Stranger, I can speak positively about it at large for the most part. Jack White's guitar tones and licks, and at this point I think we can establish that he has his unique brand and style to him. He really did solidify himself with Boarding House Reach, I feel, and whatever influence he took from that album to put on this Raconteurs release, I feel like it complements it well without being too distracting. And that's a really important positive I can give this album. I was worried that this was going to be a Boarding House Reach Part 2. Not that I didn't enjoy that album, I actually love it to pieces. I just wanted this to stand on its own to warrant itself as a Raconteurs release. However, with this next point I'm going to make, I feel like I'm contradicting myself because I just asked for less Jack White experimental stuff and more straightforward rock. Now don't get me wrong, a lot of the straightforward rock tracks on here go over quite well. It's just ones like Help Me Stranger and Only Child. These ones feel like they're a little too contrived, a little too derivative, and yeah. Ironically, I found the Donovan cover to be one of the more interesting songs, and I think this best exemplifies my opinion here in the way that I'm searching for this golden mean. I don't want too much of the Jack White experimental stuff, and I don't want too much of this straightforward rock sound either. It really just is me nitpicking, I will admit that, because I really enjoy this album. I think there are a lot of great tracks on here that I'll come back to. Album as a whole, though, it's questionable. Compared to the other albums that I've scored an 8 or a 9 or even a 10 this year, this one isn't quite there. But I still think it's a solid release. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. So sound off down below in the comments. Let me know what you think of this new Raconteurs album. Do you think it was worth the wait of 11 years? Certainly is a long time to go without the Raconteurs. I mean, we've had a lot of Jack White projects, but this one in particular, what do you think of it? Leave a like, subscribe if you're new in town. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a rockin' day.